You know how sometimes you just get caught up in a feeling? And you're like, where did that come from?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Today, we're going to time travel a bit.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Yeah, to see how philosophers throughout history have tried to make sense of these things we call emotions.
I love it.
It's not just a modern thing, this whole unpacking your feelings business. For centuries, some really bright minds have been wrestling with these same questions.
Like, what are emotions, really?
Exactly. What are they? Where do they come from? And how do they play out in our lives?
Yeah, yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're turning to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy,
Okay.
the entry on medieval theories of the emotions.
That classic.
It's not just one perspective. It's like a greatest hits compilation of thinkers from ancient Greece to the late Middle Ages.
And it's fascinating to see how those ideas, the ones they wrestled with, still resonate with us today.
Yeah.
How we think about emotions now.
Right. So our mission is to dig up some of those surprising, insightful ideas from all those historical perspectives. Ideas that might actually change how we see our own emotions today.
Okay.
We're talking Plato, Aristotle, Aquinas, the whole game.
The all-star team of philosophy.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think the entry rightly starts with Plato.
Okay.
He kind of set the stage for this whole discussion. Remember his Republic? The tripartite soul.
Yeah, rational, spirited, and appetitive.
Right. And what's interesting is how he saw emotions, right?
Yeah.
He was pretty cautious about them. Kind of negative, even.
Really?
Yeah, he saw them as mostly irrational,
Yeah.
coming from those lower parts of the soul, the spirited, the appetus.
Okay.
So already, right at the beginning, we have this tension between reason and emotion.
Yeah, it's a classic philosophical battle.
It really is. It still shapes how we understand ourselves today.
So for Plato, feelings like pleasure, suffering, that urge to assert yourself, aggression, they all came from those appetitive, spirited parts. And he thought our intellect, the rational part, needed to be the one in control.
The charioteer.
Yeah, guiding, checking those impulses, like holding the reins tight.
Exactly.
He did see some good in love, though.
Oh, yeah.
And the spirited part, at least in education, recognizing their motivating power.
It's hard to learn without some passion.
Right. But overall, his was very much a model of reason on top.
Control.
Now, his student, Aristotle,
Aristotle.
he took a different path.
Oh.
Yeah. He's like, wait a minute. Emotions aren't just these things we have to suppress. They're part of what makes us human.
That's interesting.
Right. So he comes up with this model. It has 4 parts. You ready?
Hit me.
First, cognitive evaluation. So like a judgment about a situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, affective feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like how something feels pleasant or unpleasant.
Yep.
Then the dynamic behavioral impulse, the urge to do something.
Right.
And finally, the physiological stuff. Heart racing when you're scared.
Body's response.
Yeah, so he saw all these as connected. He gave emotions this much more central, integrated role, I think, than Plato did.
He's like, emotions aren't just the enemy.
Exactly. And for him, it wasn't just reason versus emotion. It was more like they work together.
Interesting.
And unlike Plato's, strict control idea,
Yeah.
Aristotle thought that through education, habits, we could shape our emotions.
Train them, almost.
Yeah, almost.
So we'd feel the right way at the right time.
Exactly. Because for Aristotle, he was a big ethics guy.
Oh, yeah. The good life.
He thought we could cultivate good emotional habits, virtues, so our feelings would help us live a good life, not get in the way.
So it's not about eliminating them. It's about refining them.
Right.
Making them work for you.
I like that.
Okay, next up, the Stoics. Can't talk about ancient philosophy without them. The Stoics. Famous for their unique perspective.
They had a pretty radical take on emotions, didn't they?
Oh, they did. They basically saw emotions as wrong.
Like mistakes?
Yeah. Mistaken judgments.
Wow.
And their big goal was apatheia.
Apatheia.
Freedom from emotional disturbance. And they thought you could achieve this through reason, understanding things rationally.
So not just controlling emotions, but like getting rid of them.
In a way, yeah. Pretty extreme, right?
Like to them, our emotional responses weren't natural, but errors in thinking.
Exactly.
Huh.
They even had a system for categorizing them. 4 primary types.
Okay.
Based on whether the object of the emotion was good or evil, and whether it was present or future.
So like good and present would be.
Pleasure.
Okay.
And good. but future would be.
Desire.
You got it. And then on the flip side, distress for present evil and fear for future evil.
Wow, a whole system.
Yeah, this fourfold classification, it was pretty influential, even though their whole idea that emotions were just false judgments that didn't really catch on in the Middle Ages.
But this categorization, it did stick around.
It did.
And they even developed a whole therapia, to help people reach apatheia.
Trying to train yourself to see the world without those emotional lenses.
Wow. I mean, from where we stand now, that sounds really, really tough.
It does.
Maybe even, unhealthy.
Yeah, you have to wonder. And even back then, other philosophers weren't so sure.
Really?
Yeah, like Plutarch.
Okay.
He argued for moderation. Metriopathies, like the emotional part of us is real. It has a purpose. Getting rid of it completely, that's not only impossible, might even be bad for us.
Makes sense.
And then you have Plotinus, the Neoplatonist.
Okay.
He also talked about apatheia, but from a more spiritual angle. He suggested that earthly emotions just fade away as you ascend to higher spiritual realms.
So a different kind of detachment.
Yeah, more about transcending them than erasing them. So even in ancient times, you have this whole spectrum of thought on emotions.
That's fascinating. All right, so fast forward a few centuries. What happens when Christianity enters the picture? How did those early Christian thinkers, working within their faith, how do they make sense of all these classical ideas about emotions?
It's a good question. They didn't just toss them out.
No.
No.
Yeah.
They did some pretty clever synthesizing, like the Alexandrian theologians, Clement, Origen.
Okay.
They took Stoic and Platonist ideas and kind of wove them into Christian doctrine. They saw freedom from disruptive emotions as key to Christian perfection.
Okay.
And even as a prerequisite for this deep mystical union with divine love, agape. It's kind of a paradox, though, right?
How so?
Because they often describe this union in very emotionally charged language.
I see.
But the idea was these feelings, they were spiritually transformed, different from the messy, everyday kind.
So it's like purifying emotions.
Yeah, leading to a higher, more spiritual way of feeling.
And this idea, it spread to Western monasticism through John Cassian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His writings were super influential in shaping monastic practice. And this whole link between divine love and detaching from worldly emotions, it was embraced by big names. Gregory the Great, Bernard of Clairvaux. But we should remember, it wasn't the only approach in early Christianity.
Right.
Thinkers like the Cappadocian Fathers, Augustine,
Okay.
they knew about these ascetic ideals, but they focused more on the Platonic control, moderation of emotions for everyday Christians living in the world, not just monks.
More practical.
Yeah, acknowledging the reality of having feelings in daily life.
Now, the entry mentions this idea of first movements.
Ah, yes.
That sounds like a point where Christian thought really engaged with the nature of impulse, intention. What were those first movements exactly?
It actually goes back to the Stoics. It refers to those knee-jerk reactions. Thoughts or feelings that pop up before you can really think about them or give them the okay.
Interesting.
Early Christians, like Origen and Augustine, they took this idea and gave it theological weight in the context of sin.
Okay.
Like Augustine argued, these spontaneous thoughts, feelings, especially those tied to original sin, they weren't sins in themselves until you chose to dwell on them, act on them.
So it shifts the focus to our will, right?
Exactly. It's that conscious consent that makes something a sin. Augustine, he was a sharp guy.
He was.
He thought, even without our direct approval, these first stirrings were still technically emotions.
Okay.
And this is where he differed from the Stoics a bit.
Oh.
He thought they were maybe a little too idealistic about human rationality. He saw temptation as something that could pop up outside our control initially.
Yeah.
It's only when we choose to play with those temptations that they turn into sin.
This led to different levels of sin later on, right? Based on how much deliberation was involved.
Yeah. Exactly. It's pretty nuanced. But that's the deep dive for another day.
Fair enough. Now, what about positive emotions in this early Christian world? The entry talks about love, compassion, misericordia, compassio.
Yeah. Love, especially divine love, was huge.
Okay.
Misericordia, that was the common term for mercy, compassion in the Bible. Both God's mercy towards us and our feeling of pity for others.
Gotcha.
And then you see compassio popping up more and more.
Compassio.
Yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't a classical Latin word, But it gained traction in Christian writings to describe specifically that human experience of shared suffering, to suffer with.
Like there was this theological distinction.
Yeah, like God is merciful, but maybe his experience of suffering is different, right?
Right.
Augustine, in his philosophical musings, defined pity, misericordia, as a kind of compassion, compassio, that actually motivates us to help those in need.
Okay.
Then Gregory the Great took it further. He saw compassion as this core Christian sentiment, tied to charity. Later, Aquinas, the big systematizer, refined this even more. He said compassion, as an emotion, it's ethically neutral on its own. It becomes good, virtuous, when it's guided by charity, that active love and concern for others.
So not just feeling sorry, but actually doing something.
Exactly. He even said we should cultivate both the feeling and the commitment to action.
Powerful stuff. So these early Christian thinkers, they were like philosophers within their faith.
Right. Taking those existing ideas,
Yeah.
but adapting them to fit their understanding of human nature and God.
Okay, so the entry then talks about new sources coming in.
Ah, yes. The intellectual landscape starts to shift.
What kind of new ideas were popping up?
Well, before, the conversation was mostly shaped by, Augustine and Gregory.
Mm-hmm.
But around the 11th, 12th century, boom, you get
Yeah.
this influx of new material, translations of Arabic works, philosophy, medicine, and some rediscovered texts from late antiquity.
Like what?
Thinkers like Haile Abbas, Nemesius of Emesa, John Damascene, they drew on Galenic medicine, ancient philosophy. Their writings became important sources for medieval scholars.
And the entry highlights Avicenna's faculty psychology, right? How did his ideas coming through these translations change things up?
Avicenna's works were huge. His Canon of Medicine, his De Anima,
Okay.
they were translated into Latin in the 12th century, and wow, they made waves. He had this way of studying the soul, breaking it down into different powers, faculties. And when it came to emotions, he was all about what he called the sensory moving powers and the internal senses.
Internal senses, like what, beyond the usual 5?
Exactly. He outlined several, including common sense, imagery, memory,
Okay.
and one that was crucial for understanding emotions, the estimative power.
The estimative power, that sounds important. What was that exactly?
This was Avicenna's big idea. It's the ability to just, immediately recognize what's emotionally important in something without having to think it through or having prior experience.
Like a gut feeling almost.
In a way, yeah. He famously used the example of a sheep knowing to run from a wolf. It doesn't have to learn that fear, it just knows.
Mm-hmm.
He believed this estimative power, it's what kicks off our emotional responses.
Mm-hmm.
He also went on to divide the sensory moving power into a commanding part, which he saw as the emotion center,
Okay.
and an executive part, which carries out the behavioral responses, through the nerves and muscles.
So for Avicenna, an emotion wasn't just a feeling. It was this whole process starting with a quick appraisal, then leading to action.
Spot on. And he was adamant that this behavioral aspect was, like, central to what an emotion is.
Yes.
It's not just something happening inside you, it's about how you're driven to act.
I see.
And he had some unique ideas about specific emotions, too. He didn't see pleasure or joy as straight up concupiscible or irascible.
Uh-huh.
He thought of them more as ways of experiencing, of grasping something. He called them affective, apprehensive acts. And he put pain and distress under the irascible category, which is unusual.
Yeah, that doesn't seem quite right, does it?
Well, it was a different way of slicing things. But that's Avicenna for you, always pushing boundaries.
And the entry mentions he thought humans had unique emotions.
Oh, yeah, because we have sensory reason, he called it.
Sensory reason, what's that?
It's like a higher level perception. Animals have basic senses, but we can grasp abstract concepts, time, things like that.
Okay.
And because of that, he said, we have unique emotions. Hope, fear about the future, shame, wonder. These all need a level of understanding that animals don't have.
So we're not just smarter, we're more emotionally complex.
In a way, yeah. He even linked human expressions like laughing from wonder or crying from anxiety to this sensory reason.
Mm.
So he saw both similarities and key differences between human and animal emotions.
Okay, let's move on to accountability and the will, especially those 12th century debates. What was the main focus there?
Well, Augustine's idea of sin being tied to free consent, that was still a big deal.
Mm.
And this led to questions about those first movements we talked about.
Yeah, the initial reactions.
Right. Are they morally neutral, or are we responsible for them?
A big question.
It was a hot topic. Thinkers like Anselm of Canterbury and Peter Abelard, they argued that an act was only a sin if it involved a conscious choice.
So those first movements wouldn't be sinful in themselves.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because they're not chosen.
Okay. But there was another side to this, right?
Oh yeah, there were those who thought even those initial stirrings, they could carry some blame, like maybe venial sins.
Mm-hmm.
Anselm of Lyon, Peter Lombard, they were in that camp.
Okay.
They argued that even if those first movements weren't totally free, deliberately chosen,
Yeah.
we could still be held responsible because we didn't resist them quickly enough, didn't show enough vigilance.
So where's the line between voluntary and involuntary?
That's what they were wrestling with. It became a big philosophical and theological puzzle.
And Augustine's model of sin, with all those stages, that provided a framework for this discussion, right?
Absolutely. Suggestion, temptation, first movement, pleasure, then consent. It helped map out how a temptation might become a sin.
Okay.
And Augustine, he believed that once you become aware of a first movement, you have the power to turn away from it.
Okay.
That's where the monastic practice of actively fighting off bad thoughts comes in.
Interesting.
It's like a practical application to this idea.
Hmm.
And this concept of resisting those first impulses, it even pops up in later philosophers like Descartes, Leibniz. It's a
Wow.
pretty enduring idea.
It is. Now, the entry mentions Peter Abelard trying to separate consent and will,
Ah, yes.
but it didn't really stick. Why not?
He made a subtle distinction.
Mm.
Like consenting to something also means consenting to the steps to get there, right?
Yeah.
But he said you could will an outcome without necessarily willing every single action along the way. But most others thought his idea of will was too broad. Like it covered both rational desires and more basic inclinations.
Yeah.
They generally thought will implied more thought, more choice than you have with those first impulses.
So they stuck with the idea that even things you do reluctantly are still willed in a way.
Pretty much.
Okay, what about Alred of Rievaulx and Hugh of St. Victor? They focused on this idea of affectus, right?
They did. These monastic authors were very interested in that subjective feeling of those early emotional movements, affectus.
Okay.
Alred, in his Mirror of Charity, he went deep into affectus as a core element of love, amor. He saw them as these spontaneous, involuntary things,
Yeah.
attractions or inclinations of the soul that ideally reason and the will should guide.
Okay.
He even laid out 3 kinds of love based on whether they came from affect, reason, or both together.
A three-way love system.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And the most perfect love, according to him, involved both feeling and rational choice.
Okay. And Hugh of St. Victor.
He went even further. He saw love as the root of all other emotions.
Wow.
He defined it as this basic pleasure, inclination of the heart towards something good.
Interesting.
And he saw it as the first step in a sequence.
Okay.
Love leads to desire, wanting to get closer to the beloved, and then finally, joy, resting in that possession.
So a happy ending.
You could say that. He believed emotions came from this sensory-moving affectus, not the intellectual will directly. And while he agreed that those first sparks of emotion might not be free choices, he argued that how they continued, how we reacted, that was up to us.
We have some say in the matter.
Right. But he differed from Elred on involuntary sexual stuff. He thought those were venial sins.
Okay.
So both of them, these monastic thinkers, they emphasized being aware of those first affective movements and then shaping them, directing them towards the good.
Okay, now we move on to taxonomies. New ways of categorizing emotions in the 12th and 13th centuries.
It was a time of real intellectual ferment. Philosophers trying to get a grip on this whole emotional landscape.
Yeah.
Early medieval medicine, based on Galen, they linked emotions to those 4 humors
Right.
and the movement of vital spirits, psychic
Yeah.
spirits in the body.
Okay.
And this led to a classification
Mm-hmm.
based on the direction of these spirits, towards the heart or away from it,
Okay.
and how intense the movement was, slow or fast. So you get categories like joy, distress, anger, fear.
So very physical, bodily understanding of emotions at this point.
Yeah, very much so.
But as philosophical psychology advanced, and they dug deeper into those classical texts, they started seeing problems with those old systems.
Like the whole concupiscible, irascible division.
Yeah, that was tricky.
It didn't always fit.
Yeah.
So simpler models popped up, like Hugh of St. Victor's love, desire, joy sequence.
Okay.
Richard of St. Victor, he even came up with a list of 7 basic emotions.
7.
Yeah. And then you have William of Conches. He had this radical idea.
What was that?
He said, love and hate, those were the primary emotions.
Okay.
Everything else stemmed from those two.
Interesting.
Like love for what you like, consider good, and hate for what you dislike, what's bad.
A binary system.
Exactly. And that view, it caught on with others, like Rodolphus Arden's John of La Rochelle.
Okay.
But Isaac of Stella, he went a different direction, more Augustinian.
Okay.
He combined that Stoic fourfold table with Platonic ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So he had emotions aimed at a present or future good called concupiscible, like joy, desire.
Okay.
And then those aimed at something opposed to what you love called irascible, like distress, fear.
So many different systems.
It was an explosion of ideas, everyone trying to map out this complex inner world.
It's amazing.
And then Aristotle's writings on the soul became more widely known in the 13th century.
Mm-hmm.
And people realized, hey, some of these old classifications, especially that strict concupiscible, irascible divide, it didn't match up with Aristotle's idea that you could have opposite emotions within the same part of the soul. So they started using a new criterion for classification, this idea of arduum.
Arduum.
Yeah, what's difficult to attain or avoid. That became a defining feature of the irascible emotions.
Okay.
And it was John of La Rochelle who really ran with this.
He did.
Oh, yeah. In his Summa de Anima, he came up with this intricate system where emotions were acts of both the concupiscible power, directed at what you like or dislike,
Yeah.
and the irascible power dealing with that arduum, that sense of striving strength or weakness when facing it.
Okay, so two powers working together.
Exactly. And then he broke down each category even further.
Like how?
Well, first he divided them based on whether they were self-directed or aimed at others.
Okay.
So within the concupiscible, related to liking, he had appetite, desire, joy, delight. For dislike, there was distaste, aversion, pain, distress.
Wow.
And then for the other directed ones, liking in others of good was love. Disliking it was envy.
Nice.
He did the same detailed breakdown for the irascible emotions, tying them to honor, power, and reactions to evil. It's a really thorough attempt to map out the whole emotional spectrum.
So we've got this detailed picture of how medieval philosophers saw emotions. Now, what about those heavy hitters? Albert the Great, Bonaventure, Thomas Aquinas. How did they build on all this?
Well, following Avicenna's faculty psychology and that concupiscible-irascible division, both Albert and his student Aquinas, they also saw emotions as acts of those sensory moving powers of the soul.
Okay.
Interestingly, Albert also used some classifications that came from the Stoics.
Okay.
And Aquinas, while influenced by John of La Rochelle's work, he developed his own system. It's in his massive Summa Theology.
The Summa Theology is huge.
It is. One point of disagreement between Albert and Aquinas, though, was about the nature of emotions. Were they qualities in the soul or movements, processes?
Interesting.
Aquinas, leaning on Aristotle's physics, he was all about the movement. He saw contrary emotions as different types of movement. And then there's Bonaventure. He was a Franciscan, right?
Yeah.
He offered a different take. More focused on the role of the intellectual will in emotions.
Okay.
He kind of blurred the lines between those sensory and intellectual moving powers. He thought emotions came more directly from the intellectual will.
Like the will could feel.
In a way, yeah. Like in his theological writings on the soul of Christ, he even argued that Christ's intellectual will had concupiscible and irascible aspects.
Wow.
And that Christ could experience passions like joy and distress. This Franciscan emphasis, it wasn't as developed in Bonaventure as it would be later in Scotus.
Okay.
But it kind of paved the way for that exploration of passions of the will.
So now let's get into Aquinas' system. It was super influential, right? How did he categorize things?
Aquinas, he started with that basic concupiscible irascible split. Concupiscible for reactions to sensory good or evil.
Yeah.
And irascible for when that good or evil is seen as difficult, arduum. He also brought back Avicenna's estimate of power. He called it particular reason in humans.
Okay.
That's how we grasp the emotionally relevant parts of things. He even came up with this idea of the formal object of emotion.
Formal object.
Yeah, it's like the specific quality that triggers an emotion.
Okay.
So for fear, it's danger.
Makes sense.
And then within those big categories, he named specific emotions.
Give me the rundown.
All right, for self-regarding concupiscible, aimed at sensory good. Love, as that initial liking. Desire, as the movement towards it. And pleasure, joy, as that state of satisfaction when you get it.
Okay.
For sensory evil, you've got hate, aversion, and pain, distress.
Got it.
Now, for irascible, those dealing with arduous good or evil, hope and despair for a hard-to-get future good,
Okay.
fear and courage for a hard-to-avoid future evil, and anger for present evil that's hard to overcome.
Okay.
And fun fact, his system didn't include a direct opposite for anger.
No, that seems like a big one to leave out.
It does right.
So it sounds like Aquinas, he was really trying to create this super detailed logical system,
Oh, he was a grand synthesis of Aristotle and Avicenna.
but trying to bring those two together, that couldn't have been.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Especially with Avicenna's faculty psychology and Aristotle's more dynamic view of the soul.
Yeah.
Like when Aquinas talks about love, desire, pleasure, sometimes it sounds like he's describing the behavioral changes, not just the immediate feeling.
Mhm.
And he was very big on the psychosomatic nature of emotions. He saw them as involving both body and soul.
Okay.
But despite all that, his work on emotions was huge. It shaped so much that came after. He even directly criticized the Stoic apatheia ideal.
He did.
Yeah, he argued that feeling emotions appropriately, guided by reason and virtue, that was essential for a good human life.
So emotions have their place.
They do. Okay, ready for the final act?
Hit me.
John Duns Scotus and the late medieval period. Things shift again here.
In what way?
Well, Scotus, he critiqued some of those earlier systems,
Yeah.
especially those that leaned heavily on arduousness and Avicenna's intentions.
Okay.
He said animal behavior wasn't about recognizing some hidden intention. It was more like automatic responses to what they perceive.